Okay. Well, I think we are just about ready to get going. I see a couple more people getting added on here, so we're just going to give it just one more moment um, as we get going here. All right. Okay, so I guess let's go ahead and get started. So I just want to thank everyone for being here this evening. I know it's been a long couple of hours, and I know it's been a long summer, but we are really excited to have your students with us. We're excited to get to know them through this process, and hopefully tonight we're able to share some helpful information for you all, so that we can all be on the same page going into the next week and into our recruitment process. But again, I just really want to thank you all for coming. I know it's a busy time of year. There's a lot going on. And so we appreciate you taking the time to be here with us this evening. Again, for those that joined here at the end, a couple of housekeeping rules before we do introductions. There is a Q&A function down at the bottom of your screen. You can use that to ask questions. So if you ask a question and our team is able to answer it, we can either answer it live or in a typed format. As those questions are answered, they will populate to the whole group. So if you have a question that you think other people might have too, that's probably a great function to use. If it's more of a personal question, you can use the chat function, and those chat functions are just with the panelists on the screen here. So don't worry about, feeling like people can see you or hear you in this call. Maybe we're comfy at home, but we can, you're going to be muted and your camera is off at this time. So don't be stressed about that. So we are going to go into some introductions here, and I'm excited to introduce some of my friends and colleagues on this call. So we're going to start with our Vice President for Student Affairs. Dr. David Surratt is here on the call with us. I don't know if you want to say hello, Dr. Surratt. We're thankful that you're here with us this evening.
For sure, thanks. I can't turn my video on for some reason, but I wanted to see. No worries.
Here, I'm going to make you a co-host. That'll work. You should be able to turn it on now. Right. Everyone's a co-host. Oh, amazing.
Sounds good. Hello, everyone. My name is David Surratt, Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students here at OU. Good to see you all.
Perfect. And we'll just kind of go down the line here. Kristen, if you want to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. My name is Kristen Partridge. I'm the Associate Vice President for Student Affairs, Associate Dean of Students. I sit right next to Dr. Surratt. Well, there's a wall there, but essentially I sit right next to Dr. Surratt and help him with everything that he needs. And we are really glad to welcome you and your families to the university.
Awesome. I'm going to have my friend Jill go next.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Jill Tran, and I am coordinator for fraternity and sorority programs and services. And like Kristen, I assist Kylie with recruitment processes and year-round events that we do here on campus.
Thanks, Jill. All right. And then lastly, I've got my friend Emily on the call here. I am the worst, and she doesn't have a box on this slide, but that does not mean that she is not important. So Emily, if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, hi, I'm Emily Reinhardt. I am the Graduate Assistant for Fraternity and Sorority Programs and Services. We're so excited to get to talk to y'all tonight.
Perfect. And like it says there on the slide, my name is Kylie Frisbee. I am one of the coordinators for Fraternity and Sorority Programs and Services here at OU, and I serve as the Panhellenic Advisor. So if you're wondering, who's been spamming your inbox for the last couple of weeks as your students have been registering for recruitment, that's me, face to a name. So again, thank you for being partners with us. Really, before we get started, we just want to thank you all for being here, for being partners, for supporting your students. At the end of the day, I think we're all on the same team, right? Like, we all care about your students so much. That's why we do this work. And so we're just really thankful to be able to partner with you in that way. And we're hoping that this call will help clear up some things, answer some questions, provide some guidance for you all as we move into the next week. So again, thanks for being here. So we're going to start with sort of the elephant in the virtual room, which is updates about our recruitment process. So as we know, things have changed pretty rapidly over the last 24, 48 hours. I really wanted to kind of talk about some of the timelines and then some of the comparison pieces here. And, our friends from Student Affairs, Dr. Surratt and Kristen, are going to talk a little bit about this as well. But the big thing we want you all to know is, we've got safety at the front of our minds for your students and all that we do. And that's really what spurred this recent change. So as you know, this whole summer, we've been working to try to, build a recruitment process that is helpful and meaningful and fun for students. But over the last couple of days, there are a lot of things that have come up that have really made us had to change our mind for some things. And that is unfortunate. And so I think before we get into too much, I really want you to know that I want you to know that your feelings are valid. The frustrations that you feel, they are so valid. We're feeling them too. It's not an ideal situation for anyone to be in, but I'm hoping that we can make the most of it and that we can, still continue to build a process that's fun for our students and that builds that connection and that meaningful sort of belonging pieces that are really important for college. So the updates piece here, pretty obvious. We have moved to a 100% virtual recruitment experience for Panhellenic this year. Again, this is, really because we care about your student safety, and we care about the safety of our larger community. We know students, risk levels are different for everyone and different for every event. And this event is risky. It's large groups. And, we tried really hard to make them as small as possible and segment things. But the big change here is, over the last day or so, a lot of our chapters on campus, we've given them pretty rigid guidelines over the summer and into this last week. And they just weren't following those guidelines anymore. So we had to pull the plug because it just wasn't going to be a safe experience for your students or the rest of our OU community at this time. The other piece here I want to talk about before I pass it over to VP Surratt is the timeline. So I know there's been some confusion, some questions about what that timeline looked like. So, as we know, as I hope you know, at least, we like to think that we're a really communicative team. I really pride myself on having like a strong communication with all of our stakeholders. That's something we try really hard to do. And, we've tried to really loop people in as soon as we can. So, that's that piece on that. But even just 24 hours ago, this decision hadn't really been made yet. A lot of things have come up in the last couple of days that spurred this change. Chapters, like I said, breaking policies, not following guidelines, just really a blatant disregard for the rules, to be honest. And so we made that decision early yesterday, and then later this morning, so just a day later, our national organization, the National Panhellenic Conference, put out a call to all of the campuses requesting that everyone move online immediately. So, I'm glad that we were able to make that decision before that call came through, but it is nice to know that across the country, we are in line with our peer institutions, we're in line with our friends from other campuses. And I think we feel good about that kind of moving forward into this week. So one other big question that seems to be coming up in our myriad of emails is the question about comparison. So I wanted to throw it over to Dr. Surratt to talk a little bit about how that looks with Crimson Welcome Week. I think that's a big question that keeps coming up is, how are we able to do Crimson Welcome Week and live in the residence halls and do all of these things in person, but Panhellenic Recruitment isn't able to be? And I think our vice president will probably have some words for that he'd like to share.
So I'm aware that there's been some questions about, if there's any, lack of consistency in the way we've operated on the rest of campus. The biggest reason, frankly, is that we have university staff sponsored events, and we also have university employees who are actually monitoring and actually holding folks accountable when it comes to any university-sponsored events that are happening on campus. This is, compared to our respect and our relationship with our Greek-affiliated houses, which essentially are volunteers and student leaders who are working in partnership with the university, and we're trying to respect that. And to be honest with you, it's been something that we've worked hard to maintain a relationship that gives enough autonomy for our students to grow and have accountability for their own types of development opportunities in the houses, but also it limits our ability to actually hold folks accountable or simply monitor any activities and events that are happening off campus. And so to that specific question, I'm happy to answer that one. I want to also raise some larger context. For those who are watching the news, in the last hour, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill spent 1 week open and trying to offer both in-person opportunities and experiences before now having to actually shut down. They had 135 positive cases and now 300 students are in self-isolation just because of the spread of the virus in a week's time on their campus. So there's a reason why we're trying to watch and monitor very closely whatever we can influence and control in campus events and programs on campus, because frankly, we want this experience to continue to thrive for our students, for the opportunities to grow and change and be educated from the opportunities both on campus, informally outside of the classroom, but also in person in the classroom as well. So there's a lot at stake here. And I've had a lot of conversations with a number of people who've asked the same question too. The other piece I want to distinguish is we've had very specific and tenuous operational procedures applied to our residential experience and our housing requirements, our staff ratios for RAs and orientation leaders, and a number of things we've done to actually pre-test before students have even arrived on campus. No staff member, no student living on campus was able to even enter our facility or stay in our facilities without a negative COVID test provided to us upon move-in. So there's been a number of factors we put into place to make sure it's as safe as possible. But at the end of the day, we can only do as much as we can from the university standpoint, but we've got to depend on our community to be able to stop the spread of the virus as well. So I hope that was helpful context from my perspective.
Definitely. Thank you so much. And like we said, if there are questions that come up, feel free to drop them in that Q&A box. And towards the end, I think we can really hit some of those questions and make sure that we're answering things in a helpful way. So thank you so much, VP Surratt. All right, so another kind of question that seems to be coming up a lot that we want to share is just the idea of, what's the new member experience going to look like? I think that's something it feels, because recruitment is going to look a little bit different. What is that new member experience going to look like once your students do decide to join a chapter? So, we've been working a lot with our organizations about safety for in-person events. So, like VP Surratt mentioned, these chapter facilities aren't really located on campus. So, we've been really partnering with our organizations to plan for the fall. How can we have some maybe a little bit smaller events than we're used to? For some context, our average Panhellenic chapter size is right at 300. So we're talking about really large groups of people, which are at this time not really recommended by any of the health officials. So we're trying to find ways to build that connection, still have those in-person events if we can, just in a little bit of a smaller setting. Cost is another question that I think people have a lot of questions about, and that's a really fair point. We're really proud of our financial transparency program that Panhellenic does. That's done at a national level through the MPC. But if you've looked at that sheet, it's expensive to be a member of a Panhellenic organization, and I think there's a lot of resources that are available to students, lots of national support, local support, all those kinds of things that go into the experience. But yes, I mean, part of that is sort of the social experience, and those things do cost money. And so we've been working a lot with our organizations to say, where can we cut back? Or where can we maybe redirect those funds to be used in a different way if these large scale social events might not happen this semester? So the cost is something we've been looking into for sure. And that's something I would really encourage you, if your students do have questions about that, can they talk about that during recruitment? Definitely. Cost, the financial commitment is a piece of the sorority experience. And it's good to know those experiences and those commitments going in. And so, chapter members are prepared to talk about the financial aspect of being a sorority woman. So I think those are things that you can definitely encourage your students to ask about. And then lastly, this piece about integration into the chapter. I think the biggest thing I want to stress here is these students, and unless maybe they have an older sibling or somebody that has gone through this process recently before them, our students don't really know what it's going to look like. Just like every year, the students have to kind of learn for themselves. We've got some older members in our chapters that they know the traditions, they know the fun things that their chapters do to integrate these women into the organization. And I've been pretty excited from my conversations with our chapters to see the ways that they're getting really creative about how can we still keep these traditions alive? How can we still make these things really fun? But just do it in a safer way. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's bad. It's just different. So I think kind of trying to shift our mindset. I know I've been really trying to do that personally through the pandemic. And I think that might help. So, if your student is looking for maybe a perspective shift or something, thinking about, different isn't bad. It's just different. I think that's maybe a helpful way to kind of have those conversations. And then lastly, we talked a little bit about belonging, connection there in that piece, but I also wanted to mention the mental health piece as well. We've had quite a few parents and family members reach out, kind of worried about their students' mental health in terms of the fall semester, because it is going to be a little bit different than maybe the college experience that students thought they were going to have. And I get it, it's hard. I feel like the pandemic has taken a lot of things from a lot of people. And so again, I want to validate you and I want to validate your students and having those feelings. And all things affect people differently. And so, we have resources on campus for our students that are struggling with their mental health. We've got our Goddard Health Clinic and, our counseling center that do amazing work. And so, if students are needing that, they can always reach out to me. I'm kind of that bridge between the sororities and campus. And I'm always happy to help get students connected if they need connected to those resources. So I know I've been emailing everyone. I know your students have my email as well. They can always reach out to me, even if it's not about Panhellenic recruitment. If it's just about life later on, I'm always happy to be their person on campus. So kind of on this piece, I don't know if any other panelists have anything they'd like to add or share on any of this. The floor is open if you do. If not, that's okay.
Mental health. So there's been recent studies and research talking about 1 in 4 young people are experiencing suicidal thoughts during the pandemic. And it's one of those reasons why we're extra motivated to try to figure out how do we make a college experience work while it may be different. How do we make it work to build some social connections? And just talking to students over the summertime, personally who've been impacted from issues around kind of emotional wellness and health. This is the reason why, one of the many reasons why it's important for us to try to make this experience happen. So I wanted to emphasize that too.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Okay, so kind of going into our next piece, we're going to kind of get more into logistics and how recruitment is going to actually work. So I know there's been a lot of questions. Your students have questions. Their answers are also coming. So I don't want people to be stressed just at this moment in time. But virtual recruitment, how does it work? So we are going to be using the Zoom platform, this lovely platform that we are all on tonight. Zoom, like any piece of technology, has got its limitations, but I think we've worked with our chapters and we've figured out the ins and outs to make this a really fun experience in a virtual setting. So basically, your students each morning will get a list of their party schedules to their email, their recruitment guides or ROGAMAs. Everything's gotta be Greek. We love the Greek letters. So the ROGAMAs, recruitment guides, they will deliver your party schedule, your student's party schedule to her for that day. And then she'll really just click those links, go into the party room, and get to talk to members of the organization, get to know a little bit more about them, have, that smaller group conversation to get to know each other a little bit more. So, the first round, we'll go through each round of recruitment here in a little bit, but largely we're going to be utilizing the Zoom platform. In a typical year, the chapters maybe would show videos and things during presentations. And so those presentations and videos will be hosted on the Canvas platform. So if your student is not in our Canvas class, they can let us know. They can just email us at panhellenic@ou.edu and we can get them added in. So, those videos are going to be super easy. They'll watch them as a group with their recruitment guide groups, but they'll be on her Canvas page so she can go back and watch them again later if she'd like, before she makes selections. So Zoom is really easy, really user-friendly. Our chapters feel pretty confident in doing this experience through Zoom. The nice thing going into this peer institution feedback piece is because our recruitment process is a little bit later this year, there have been a lot of campuses who have done this before us in the last couple of weeks, and it's been really great. We've heard really good reviews from other campuses about, the process, having like actual quality conversations, which is amazing. If anybody has been through or knows someone who's been through recruitment on our campus in recent years, that, like I said earlier, like we're talking really big groups. And so we've got tons of people packed into a small space and you can't even hear what's happening half of the time. I feel like the women always leave recruitment with sore throats because they've been yelling for a week. And so we're really excited about the opportunity for students to have quality conversations where they can actually see and hear each other in an accessible way. So I think Zoom's really going to offer that for our population here. And again, our peer institutions have talked about how it's been really great across the board and students have been able to have those meaningful conversations still. So we're going to talk a lot about tips and tricks, with your students, things that they can do. We've talked a little bit in our, we've done some publications about how to set your space up, how to minimize distractions, how to feel confident going into those conversations. But, I think some of the things you can really chat with your students about is, maybe having some notes. Like I always like to brain dump. So if your students have some things that they're looking for in an organization, maybe their values, maybe they are experiences, maybe they could put those things on a paper and, stick it to their computer screen. And as those things come up, they can have that as a reminder of, okay, I don't want to know more about these things. I want to ask about these things. So, they don't have to like carry a notepad around with them like they might have during a formal recruitment process. I think there's just a lot of tips and tricks that you can do to help support your student in this way. But the biggest thing we always tell parents and families and guardians, anybody that supports a student through this process is, like building up their confidence is going to be really important and encouraging them to be their self. I think a lot of times there comes a lot of feelings and stories with Panhellenic recruitment, and that's to be expected and it's normal. But I think the more that we can really help students be their authentic selves and have those authentic conversations, it's going to be the best experience that they can have in that way. So, whether it's having a serious conversation or just getting to the heart of what they're looking for, I think those are some ways that you can help support your student as they go into this virtual process. And, the things that recruitment can feel like a lot of times, things that matter, our outfits, our jewelry, stuff that doesn't matter but can feel like it does sometimes. I'm pretty excited that those things aren't going to be really a distraction this year. We get to focus on the things that actually matter, the conversation, learning about the sisterhood, finding ways that we can integrate into that is going to be really important. So those are some things we're pretty excited about. Okay, so we're going to go into the basics here. We'll kind of breeze through some of this stuff because I want to leave lots of time at the end for questions. I know my friends over here are probably answering them. I'm sharing my screen, so I can't see the little Q&A box, but I'm sure they're answering them furiously. I can hear typing. So we're going to go through the basics of recruitment just so you all kind of know. I know we have families every year that say, I have not a clue what recruitment even is. And that's how I was when I went through. I didn't know anything. So I always like to start from ground one, the very basics, and then go from there. So our recruitment process on our campus has 4 rounds. The first round is open house. It's an invitational, non-invitational round. So everybody goes to all 11 of our chapters during round 1. The events are pretty short. They're 15 minutes. They're going to be on Zoom. A student will join the larger meeting room. They'll be broken up into little breakout rooms to have more intentional conversation. And then they will go back into the main meeting room at the end. So that's a little bit about round one. Round two is our first invitational round. So round two is focused on philanthropy. So each round has a sort of a theme to go through and talk about what those conversations are going to be. So our philanthropy round parties are 35 minutes apiece. They're 25 minutes apiece. And again, students will join those individual calls. They'll be broken up into the breakout rooms, having that intentional conversation. So if your students like, maybe, what will we talk about that day? You might think about, where have I served in my community? What are some things I care about in terms of service? And how can I bring those things up in the conversation? And chapters will also ask questions that get to the heart of those things as well. So round two, again, invitational round. It's 8 parties maximum that day. So not everyone has 8 parties. I think that's really important to talk about. If we have parties that day, that is an awesome schedule. You cannot go wrong with our chapters on campus. We have 11 amazing chapters. So, some students might have 8 parties and some might have 5, some might have 2. But our recruitment guides will really help support your students through those invitational processes. So as we move through the week, our round 3, we have split round 3 into 2 days this year. So round 3 is focused on sisterhood, and these events are going to be a little bit smaller than our earlier events. So like I talked about, how Zoom does have some limitations, all technology does. One of the limitations is that you can only have 50 breakout rooms in a meeting. So we wanted to make sure that as we get into these later rounds of recruitment and people are trying to make maybe a little bit harder decisions, they have time for one-on-one conversation with one member and one potential new member, your student. So round 3, we've added an extra day so that students are able to have that one-on-one conversation. And the events are going to be a little bit smaller for each group. So round 3 is sisterhood round, again, talking about, the sisterhood and what makes that sisterhood special. A lot of students talk about why they joined during recruitment and what they were looking for in a sisterhood. So it's always a really fun round. And this round is typically a house tour round as well. So our organizations are working on ways to do that house tour in a virtual setting. Because it is always pretty fun to get to see the facilities. Our organizations work pretty hard to make those facilities shine. So we're excited to see that in a virtual setting. And then lastly, our round 4 is our preference round. So preference round events are an hour apiece. Again, they will be on Zoom. And like round 3, we've added events so that they can be smaller parties, to where there can be one-on-one conversations. So preference round, we talk a lot about how we see members typically talking about why they joined, and then more importantly, talking about why they stayed, why they want to give back to this organization. They're going to be talking about more serious things like what you want out of your collegiate experience, what you want out of your sorority experience, and how your chapter can maybe help you with those things. So that's a little bit about that. As we go through this, these are just some tips for supporting your student. I know the recruitment process can feel like a lot. It can feel overwhelming, especially in a time like this where things are a little bit different than they have been in the past. So, some things that you can do to support your student: really listen to their frustrations, validate their feelings. We understand it. The process can be a little bit confusing and scary. And they, knowing that they might not want you to do anything. It's okay if you don't have to, email our team. You don't have to give us a call. Sometimes they might just want to vent to you, and that is okay. But if your student does vent to you and, maybe you don't know how to respond, or you don't know how to have that conversation with them, our team is here. We're happy to help walk you through that. We've been there, we've done it. So if you want to give us a call and, say, hey, this is my student's experience and I don't know how to best support them, we're happy to be those people to have that conversation with you and equip you so that you can help your student in the best way possible. Because like I talked about at the beginning, we're all on the same team, right? Like, we care about your students, just like you do. maybe not in the same way that you do, but we do care about your students a lot. They're members of the OU family. So we want to keep people, we want to help people make those memorable experiences and have a great time. The next piece on here is an important one. Understand that this is your students' experience. This is a time for them to learn, to grow. It's a time where we can make mistakes. Like, that is what college is about, is to become, like Kristen Partridge always says, you 2.0. You want to become, maybe not a better version of yourself, but a version of yourself that you want to be. And so, understanding that this experience, if you are someone who was in a sorority, was in a fraternity, the process looks a lot different and the experience looks a lot different than it used to. And that's not a bad thing. So understanding that this is their experience, and, you can support them through that too as well. And then lastly, just being intentional with your conversations. This is something we train our student staff a lot on, is not telling your students what to do. It's their decision, and we trust that they are able to make that decision. And so, we train our staff on how to guide them through those decision-making processes, and how to let them get all their thoughts out and then come to a conclusion on their own. So those are some things we always encourage parents and families to do, or really anyone supporting a student through this process. I think it can be really helpful. And all of these things on this slide, yes, they can be applied to Panhellenic Recruitment. Panhellenic Recruitment is great, but these things can all apply to the rest of the collegiate experience too. So I think some of this stuff, this is a nice time to kind of practice and hone those skills as we go into sort of the rest of the collegiate experience. Some of these things are kind of what we talked about, but the family's role during recruitment, I know sometimes people can be like, I really want to help my student and I don't know how. So being a sounding board during and after recruitment, being a celebrator of your student, it's okay to celebrate the good times. And like any experience, there might be some bad times too. And that's not something to be ashamed of. It's life. And so you're still celebrating them through those things, being a support system, helping them, being supportive of their decision-making process, even maybe if it's a decision that you or I wouldn't make. And then, being partners and friends. I think, as an institution, we do really like to partner with parents, and, Kristen and VP Surratt might have something to add in this slide, as they work a lot with our parents and families too. But these are some things that we recommend as the family role, and we're excited to kind of partner with you in that for sure. Perfect. Okay, so a couple last things before we get to our Q&A session. We always like to go through, parents ask every year, what are my students' chances of joining a sorority? And I'm a numbers gal. I'm all about the data. If anybody is a data gal like me, you're going to appreciate this slide. So we always look at the numbers from the previous year just to help give a snapshot of what our process looks like, and to really showcase the importance of having an open mind during the recruitment process. So last year we had just over 1,100 participants, and at the end of the process, 964 were matched with a chapter and 192 were unmatched. So we're going to talk about what being unmatched means. But I think this really showcases how important it is to have that open mind. The process, people always say, trust the process. I'm not a fan of that saying. I say, trust yourself. You're an adult, your students are adults. They are able to make really great decisions. And so, encouraging to have that open mind, because, if you play the process fairly, if you go in just looking for connection in general and not looking for one specific organization, there is a really great chance that you can join an organization that you're interested in. So I think this hopefully will help kind of show like I said, that process of having an open mind. And so we're really proud of our match rate. We're right at 83% of students that participate in recruitment matching. So when I talk about unmatched, when I talk about that, what does that mean? There are 3 ways that you can end up as an unmatched PNM through the recruitment process. So the largest that you can see there, almost 80%, are people that withdrew from the process. That means that they have intentionally removed themselves from the recruitment process. Again, this is not a bad thing and nothing that we want to feel any shame or guilt about, right? Sometimes this process is not for everyone, and that is okay. Some people, that they might enter their first Zoom room and be like, whoa, not for me. And that is totally fine. No one is going to judge them for that. Our recruitment guides are trained, and we pick them very strategically. They're involved in a lot of other things on campus. And so we know that the Greek letters that you wear in your chest, they don't make your identity. Like, they are not all that there is about you. And so a lot of times the students that withdraw from the process, they kind of help, they can help have that experience and help talk through those things with your student, for sure. Another way that students end up as an unmatched P&M during recruitment is if they intentionally single preference. So that means on preference night, the last night of recruitment, if your student ends up going to 2 chapters that evening, it's a 2-chapter maximum event, and they say, I went to both of these groups, they're awesome, but maybe I really feel like I fit best with this one group and I wouldn't want to accept an invitation from the other, then they intentionally single preference. We talk about this with students too. This, you probably have heard this called another thing, and I am really big on language and how important language is. You might have heard this called suicide. For very obvious reasons, we don't use that word to describe what this is. I believe in calling things what they are. So this is not that, right? So if your student does say that, it's okay to say like, hey, maybe let's use intentional single preference, and our recruitment guides do that as well. But so that is what, that's what that means is, the students went to 2 parties, felt really connected to one, didn't feel connected to the other, and said, I would rather not have a chapter at all than be in this other organization. And so from all of our unmatched P&Ms from last year, these 192 people, the 11% of those 192 were unmatched ISPs. And then lastly, released. So being a complete release means that you were completely released from the process. Just means there were no invitations left on that student's schedule for the next day. So I know that can feel like kind of a lot. I think the big thing to remember here is at the end of the day, Panhellenic and really any Greek organization, they're membership-based organizations. And each of these organizations has their own membership requirements. So whether those are grades, things that students care about, it could be a myriad of things. If a student doesn't meet those membership requirements, then they can be released from the process. So those are just some things here that we always like to kind of talk about as options, but I think it's important for you all to kind of have the same language that your students are going to have. And so they're going to learn about all these things too. But if they call you and they're like, oh, I think I might ISP, we don't want you to be like, what does that mean? Hopefully you will have seen this video and will know, oh, that means intentional single preference. Awesome. But again, if your student calls you or if they text you and they're talking about things that you do not know or do not understand, I'm happy to be your in. Like, please give us a call and we can explain any of this stuff over the phone. So just let us know how we can help in that way. And then lastly, as we get to the end here and open it up for questions, this is our vision for Panhellenic. So our student leaders, I think it's important that we share this vision with a lot of different people. Our student leaders at our retreat each year pick some words that they want to embody and live by throughout the school year. And they actually picked the same words the last 2 years in a row, which I think is kind of special. And so those words are celebrate, empower, uplift. We are an all women's organization, and everything that we do revolves around celebrating women, empowering women, uplifting other women. And I'm really grateful to get to work with such amazing students. It is a really fun experience in Panhellenic, and I know it can feel like, oh my goodness, this year is going to be a lot different. There's going to be so many things that are different, but there's so many things that are going to be the same too. The things that really matter are the things that are going to be the same, which is the sisterhood, the belonging, those things. Those are the things that really matter. at the end of the day, the things that are going to be different are things like social events. Part of the sorority experience, but it's not the most important part, right? I would hope that it's not. So, these things about celebrating, empowering, and uplifting others, those are the things that we are able to keep doing, and the things that I'm excited to see continue into this kind of virtual realm as we focus on safety, we center what we do on safety and well-being, as we move into this new time. So again, I really want to thank everyone for being here, for listening to our presentation. I know it has been a long couple days, especially if your student is living in the residence halls. It is an emotional time, people moving away from home, just new experiences all around. And so Panhellenic Recruitment is going to be one of those experiences. And we're excited to get to partner with you as we support your students through that. So I've put some information here on the slide. Our Panhellenic office is located in the Jim Thorpe Multicultural Center. It's just south of the residence halls on campus. So, if you have a parent or a guardian who has ordered a gift for your student during recruitment, some parents, maybe their love language is gift giving. Those gifts will be delivered to that space, and then we will get it to your student during the recruitment process. I've put our office phone on there. Again, like I've mentioned, you can give us a call anytime and we're happy to help. And then this is our main Panhellenic email. So I monitor that email account. If I'm not the one that responds, I might forward it over to someone on our team to help kind of manage the inflow of those emails. But these are some ways that you can reach us. So, you can take those numbers down if you'd like. But yeah, so that is the bulk of our presentation here. I'm actually going to stop screen sharing so that I can see what's happening in this webinar, and we can talk about some of the questions that are coming up here. How do I get back? Oh, here we go. Stop share. Amazing. So, Jill and Emily might be helping a bit with this. Or if there are some questions that we need to answer as a group, we can kind of start, and I might call on some other panelists. Bid day. Okay, so bid day seems to be a big question. That's a great question. We haven't totally figured out what bid day is going to look like just yet. I think we have an idea, and we're really looking to our peer institutions to see what some other schools have found. I'm hoping that we can kind of pick and take the best things from each campus and then make our own process really special and fun for students. It is likely going to be largely virtual, but we're hoping to share those plans in the next day or so. We've been emailing parents. We've got an opt-in email form. If you're not on those emails, you can email that Panhellenic address and I can get you added to that email list so that you kind of know what's going on and you're in the loop. But some of the pieces of bid day, are still going to be the same, just welcoming people into the chapter, bid day, like gifts and baskets, if that's something you're interested in supporting your student with. We'll still have those options available. We will find a way to get them to your students that day. So I don't have a complete answer for bid day yet, but it will be coming very soon. And we're working with our friends across campus and other campuses to make sure that it's a really awesome and fun experience for your students. So some other questions. How will programming meetings work? That's a great question. So we are still going to be able to do our nightly recruitment guide meetings in person. We're able to partner with our classroom management office. So we're going to be using classrooms across campus with existing seating. So those classrooms, they all will have, all the groups have less than 40 students in them. I think the average group size is right at 27 or so. So the recruitment guides will still meet with those students each evening, answer questions, build community. The groups are done by hall floor. So it's people that your student is living around if they're living in the residence halls. And then students that are living off campus are also grouped together to build some community that way. So it's a pretty fun time. We're excited that we're able to use those spaces for those small group meetings. And your students will also do selections each evening in those small groups as well. So, in a typical year, we would meet as a giant group well, really two giant groups. We've got about 1,100 people registered for recruitment this year. So they would meet in two different shifts in this building we're in, the Jim Thorpe building, and do their selections. But now they're going to get to do that in their small groups, and their recruitment guides will help with that. So it's super easy. They sign in with their login information on the P&M Companion app, which we will go over all that with your students, tell them not to be stressed. They'll log in, they'll make their selections for the next round, and then the recruitment guide will verify. So it's pretty easy. But those meetings are mostly community building, answering questions, feeling good about the next day. Our recruitment guides are really good motivators. They are awesome women who they like get people really excited. I love watching them interact with our students. It's like they totally celebrate everyone all the time, and they make you feel like super confident about yourself. I feel like I always leave the RoGamma meetings being like, I rock. Like they make me feel like I rock. So I think your students will probably feel that way too. So I'm excited for them to experience that for sure. That's a great question. Thanks for asking, whoever asked that question. More information about financials. Great question. I don't have specifics. So something that I think is important to know, our chapters set their own dues and fee assessments individually. So like I talked about earlier, that financial transparency, they do share those dues and fees with us, and then we share them with you all. But I think a lot of our groups at the national and the local level are really working on budgets right now for the fall to see where can we maybe redirect some money, where can we cut back. I know at the Panhellenic level on our campus, we're looking at that. We're like, well, do we need to do dues this semester for Panhellenic? Maybe we don't. So we're kind of looking at that internally as well. But I think those are things that chapters are still working through and probably don't have a final answer for just yet. But something I do want to mention for the parents and families on the call, I think that's important to know. In a typical year, on bid day, the chapter facilities would host a parent and family welcome meeting to talk about finances, to talk about time commitment, ways that you can get involved. You can sign up for the Parents Club. Just when you thought you were probably done with parents clubs, here you are, sign up for another parents club. So, it's a time where you can connect with other parents of the new members as well. So we've asked chapters within the first week or so of membership if we can do some virtual meetings like that with you all, so that what's going on, what those finances and dues are going to look like for each organization as they get updated. So expect that to come. Your student will likely give the chapter your contact information for sure. So yeah, that's a great question. I wish I had more specific nitty-gritties, but know that is coming, and know that the chapters are definitely looking at those finances to see if we can adjust. I see some other questions here. Let me look through this little list here. Oh, to get the parent opt-in for your emails, you can just email panhellenic@ou.edu and just email it. Well, I guess you'll email me with your email address, so I can get you added to that list very easily this evening. That way you're in the loop for our next stuff as it comes out. Yes, RoGamma meetings, be comfortable. They do not need to dress up for these meetings. Our recruitment guides are going to be in comfy t-shirts, much like all of our staff here. So feel free to be comfortable. And same thing, the only other sort of in-person experience outside of those RoGamma meetings at night is on preference round. So after your student's last preference party, they will come to this space, the Jim Thorpe Center, and they will make their final selections. So that day's kind of long. It's now, I think it's 9 a.m. to 8 or so p.m., where it used to kind of just be in the evening. So we've spread it out. The parties are going to be a lot smaller, so you can have that one-on-one conversation like we talked about. But your student, after their last party, get comfy. Don't feel like we have to be in a cocktail dress coming over to the Jim Thorpe Center. Get comfy, and then they can come make their selections with us. So that's a great question. I'm going to look through here and see if I see anything else that maybe VP Surratt or Kristen can talk about.
Kylie, while you're looking, Can I share a little bit about events? I think we've had some parents have reached out to us about, what are you going to do to keep our students occupied? And I just want to let you know, we have had programming since the 12th, when we started moving students in. If your student hasn't already, I would encourage them to download the app Guidebook. This is where we have listed every program, every minute of the day. Some of those programs are capacity limited because of our social distancing guidelines. And so Guidebook is a great way for them to not only see what's going on campus for them, in-person and virtual options, but also if they need to reserve a spot, they can do that through Guidebook. So this is a free app. We emailed the students this information, and we had actually a staff member who's in student affairs whose freshman is arriving, and we were talking yesterday, and she said, oh, I've had him check his OU email, I didn't see anything. Well, we have been communicating with the email address that your student used when they applied to OU to be admitted. So you might have them check, if you were doing your good work and getting them to check their OU email, you might have them check that original email as well, because the invitations to those events were sent to that email that we have. We figure that's the one they're most likely to check right now. Another event I really want to call their attention to is tomorrow night we have our first class kickoff, and that takes place in the stadium. Our president, our newly appointed president, Joe Harris, will be speaking to the class. There's a dinner beforehand. We'll be using social distancing inside the stadium. We have a great time for them to see inside that legendary facility. We call it the Palace on the Prairie here, but we would love to see your student attend that event. And that is tomorrow evening. I believe dinner starts at 6. So if your students have questions about that, they need to look no further than the Guidebook app. They can ask their RA, their resident advisor, if they're living here with us on campus. And otherwise, they can visit Camp Crimson on our Student Life website. And we'll make sure that we get information. If all else fails, you can email any of us on this call, and we will make sure that your student gets a personal email that encourages them to get connected. But we will have programming. That programming lasts all the way up through Sunday afternoon. And then we help students, a lot of that at that point, they're kind of buckling down and figuring out what their week is going to look like. But we do have programs every day and every evening to help students stay engaged.
That's awesome. Thanks, Kristen. A couple other things I've seen in here. I've seen some questions about sort of how the virtual round one piece is going to look, and how chapters make selections after only talking to PNMs for a shorter amount of time. So I wanted to address that. I think that's an important piece to know. So on round one, the parties are going to have, between 60 and 70 students in them a piece. This is kind of how it has to be so that recruitment isn't 2 weeks long. We would love for it to be one-on-one conversation, but we also are working within some time constraints like everybody else. So I think the piece about what if one person dominates a conversation, how are we all going to get to have an equal opportunity to speak? That's a really big concern. And I totally understand that. And that's something we've been working with our chapters on since the very beginning when we decided, we need to shift to a virtual setting for round one. I mean, that was back in maybe April. It's been a while. So they've been working all summer on how to make this happen. Something we've been suggesting, and I think a lot of our groups are going to be doing this, is sort of how, like on this call, how I've been sort of facilitating, and I'll try to bring in other people. There's going to be an older member in each breakout room of each chapter who's going to serve as that facilitator. So if someone hasn't had a chance to answer, or maybe we do have, a gal who might be a little bit more long-winded. We love them. She might say, "Oh, hey, Emily, looks like you haven't got to answer this question. What are your thoughts on this? Or how do you feel about that?" Or ask her a question. So they've been training their members on how to do this and how to bring in everyone. If there's something I think that typically happens a lot during recruitment is I guess I shouldn't say typically happens a lot. When you leave a Panhellenic sorority, if there's one thing you know how to do, it is include others in a conversation. You learn a lot. Any Panhellenic alum on this call, you know what I'm talking about. We know how to shift that conversation, how to pull others in. Really they call it bumping, but how to get other people involved that maybe haven't had a chance to talk. And so our chapters are typically really good at that in person anyway. And I'm not concerned about them doing that in a virtual setting. So, but they have been training, and all of our national organizations have also been really prepping our members to feel good about that. And then the piece for, if only 15 minutes. So if in a typical year, our round one is normally 25 minutes, but half of that is getting in and out of the chapter facility in these long lines And the other piece of that is watching a video. So I think they're actually going to have a little bit more conversation this year than in the past. And, we've been talking a lot about, this pandemic is maybe going to allow us to have some room for innovation. And so maybe that's something we look at in the future, is extending the time a little bit, because they are going to have more time for conversation, more time for intentional and, just better conversation, because they're going to be able to actually hear each other in this way. So we're pretty excited about that piece of it for really any round, but specifically round one. So that's a great question for the person that asked that. Oh, suggested locations for Zoom. We love. So really anywhere where there's Wi-Fi, there's no wrong place to, well, I guess there's probably a wrong place to do Zoom. I don't know, maybe your bathroom, but we've suggested to students getting some earphones, investing in a piece of earphones, especially if your student's going to have online class this semester. This is kind of a nice way to get ready for that if any of their classes are online. So we can look at that. I think some other places you can suggest, maybe a nook on campus if there's, if they want to look at renting one of the rooms in the library and the personal rooms in the library. If you live close enough, I've had several emails asking me if we live in the OKC metro area, can our student come home and do her parties, at our house? Sure. That's awesome. So really anywhere where there is a Wi-Fi connection, is going to be the place. We have told PNMs to have the Zoom app on their phone just as a backup. We can predict what's going to happen with technology. There really hasn't been many issues on other campuses. The largest issue I heard was more of a weather issue from our friends in Iowa. So there really hasn't been that many issues in terms of technology on other campuses. So feeling confident about that, which is exciting. But really, wherever there's a Wi-Fi connection is wherever your student can feel a little bit more distraction free, maybe. So, maybe we can spread out a little bit in our residence hall room. That's a good thing. They can go outside if they want. Definitely get some fresh air between those events, because if you are a person who has a job and maybe have to spend a lot of time on Zoom, it can be kind of exhausting, and we get that. But at least the exhausting piece is from the comfort of your room and not out in the rain and the sun and getting real sweaty. In a normal year, people are like sprinting from chapter house to chapter house, just drenched with sweat in their cocktail attire at 10 a.m. It's a very special experience. So this is going to be a lot nicer, I think, this year in terms of those things. I see a question here about preference night. So the question is, are they guaranteed a bid by one of the two sororities that they preference? Is it possible after preference night that they don't get a bid? That's a great question. On preference night, if you have two parties, which that event is 2 parties maximum. So if you have 2 parties and you maximize your options, which means I loved both these groups, I could see myself in either group, I want to be in a sorority, and they preference both of those individual chapters they went to, they are guaranteed a bid to one of those chapters. Now, it might not be their first option. We were looking at the numbers, I think last year, 82% or something like that, 83% of people got their first preference. So, that's a great number to know, but, I can't predict the future, and I don't know how that's going to work out every year. But if, the only time on preference night specifically, the only time you're not guaranteed a bid that evening is if you don't maximize your options, which means that you would intentionally single preference, ISP, you would intentionally single preference one chapter. And if you don't match with that chapter, then that's the only time on preference night that you would not be guaranteed a bid. But say, for instance, your experience is like mine, my preference night when I went through recruitment 10 years ago, is that I woke up on preference round. I got my invitation list. I had 1 chapter on preference. So it's a max of 2. I had 1 chapter, and I was really excited because I knew I was going to be in a sorority that next day. I didn't even have to worry the whole day. So I knew exactly what was going on, which was really exciting. So, some people might have that experience. I had 1 chapter. I preferenced that chapter. That means I maximized the options available to me. And I was guaranteed a bid. So those are kind of the options on preference night, but that's a great question. I know it can be kind of confusing. So if there are other questions about that, let us know. Do the girls pick chapters before preference day, or is it completely chapter selection? So we have a mutual selection process for our recruitment process, which means as chapters are building invitation lists for each round, the students, the PNMs, potential new members, that's what your students are called, they are building their selections as well. And we have this amazing computer system that matches them all up. So it is a mutual selection process. It's not just the chapters, and it's not just your students. But if your student really likes a chapter and, puts them on their priority list for the next day and says, I really want to go back to this chapter, and the chapter also invites her back, that's a match. So she'll be back the next day. So it's really not super confusing, but we do go through this with your students each evening. And we'll post those videos on our website as well. So this webinar will be posted on the recruitment videos page of our website. And then we'll post the nightly selection meetings that your students will attend with their recruitment guide groups. We'll post those as well so that you can watch and kind of know at the same time what your student is hearing and going through. So those will be posted each day. So you can check that out if your student calls and it's like, I maybe have a question. You can maybe help answer them or help guide them in some way. Are there other big things that we need to address from any of the chat? Got some friends who are helping me out. Oh yeah, new member meetings. Yeah, I've been meeting with all of our organizations about what their new member process is going to look like. Most are looking at doing in-person new member meetings just in smaller groups. So a lot of our groups have talked about splitting up new member groups into little families and, maybe mixing those families as the weeks go on so people can get to know each other. But, some groups are looking at doing them largely outside. Some are looking at only having 10 to 12 people around. It's kind of up to each chapter organization of what they are wanting to do. And also sort of what their housing corporation is going to allow them to do as well. Just like any apartment off campus, our Greek housing is privately owned and managed. And they all have different rules and things that internally they have to follow. I mean, they're pretty much the same across the board, but those housing corporations have been working with our student leaders to try to figure out what those policies and what those meetings are going to look like as well. But a lot of them have been talking about maybe a hybrid of in-person and virtual, or virtual or in-person, but in smaller groups. So I hope that helps answer that question. Any other, I see a question here about locations for the small group meetings at night. Your students are going to get an email or a text message from their recruitment guide sometime tomorrow. So we're finishing up the list this evening. We just finalized our final recruitment number. So we're getting that list ready, and we will give that to your students' recruitment guides this evening or tomorrow morning. And then they'll be reaching out about where that meeting tomorrow night is going to be. But if your student isn't able or doesn't feel comfortable with doing those nightly meetings in person, we can Zoom them in. Super easy. There's a 100% virtual option for that as well. So they just need to let us or their recruitment guide know, and we can accommodate in that way. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions here. There are a lot of questions. So something we will do, I think this is important to know. If we weren't able to answer or aren't able to answer your question on this call, we're gonna put all of these questions into a Word document and answer them and post them along with the video on our website. So we'll categorize them by category and put those on our website so that you all are able to get those answers if we're not able to hit them in this meeting. Emily or Jill, are there any other things that we need to cover here? Any other big topics that seem to keep coming up? Or even Kristen or VP Surratt, I don't know if you guys have any other things you'd like to share with this group, any other things you think might be helpful as we kind of move into the recruitment process. It doesn't necessarily have to be about Panhellenic, but I'd love to open the floor and see if any of the other panelists have anything to add.
Detail that you all are able to speak to. And I wanted just to echo, I don't get a chance to see this work on a regular basis. In terms of what I do and reporting to the president, we have a number of things we work on. And I trust my staff to do the best they can for our students. I want to say thanks to those who've been offering words of support in the chat for the work that Kylie and the rest of the team have been doing. So, and Jill, Emily, you've been awesome on the Q&A responses too. Great information. And I wanted to say, thank you for those who are trying to do the best they can. This has been, 2020 has been that year of grace and pivoting. And I hope that energy continues. And I want us to have a successful semester. And as someone who identifies as a member of the Greek community, in my time as an undergrad and to this day, I really see the value of what this community can do and what it can do to impact our students. So thank you for all the support you all can give. So.
Awesome. Thanks so much, VP Surratt. We appreciate it. Kristen, I see you unmute.
All right. I just want to echo Dr. Surratt's sentiments. I also want to let you know as parents that even though we are feeling confined in some ways by our social distancing and our masking, at the end of the day, we're all innovating everything that we do. And so this is one part of your students' experience. If they choose to participate and they decide and they match on bid day, we will be so happy for them. And for those that choose not to, or maybe they decide this isn't for them right now, we will have other opportunities for them. In fact, we work really hard to stay connected with our students who decide not to join a sorority this particular week. We work hard to connect with them afterwards, and it's part of who we are. It's what we do at the university. We're the size of a school that's a public school, but we function in many ways as a private school because we're small enough and we're attentive to our students. And so I just don't want you to think that if for some reason this doesn't go the way that your daughter hopes it does, that means she won't enjoy her freshman year. Quite the contrary, we work really hard to connect with our students no matter what, to celebrate with them, and then to help them find new opportunities if that's what they want to do when this is over. So you can reach out to us personally. In fact, we all of us take emails from parents very seriously. And you can also reach out to our parent and family programs page. That's run by Tracy Carlson, and she works right in the vice president's suite with us, and really tries to make sure that parents have all the information that they need, not just about this, but about the many things that will be coming up along this journey as you join your college student in their college experience. So just making sure you know that we have the resources and the people here to help your students connect no matter what.
Awesome. Hey, I want to thank our panelists for being here. I want to thank Emily and Jill for managing the questions on the back end. I haven't really run a webinar before. There's a first time for everything, right? And I didn't realize when I was sharing my screen, I couldn't really see anything else, but here we are. It's a great time to be alive, y'all. It's awesome. So we're just really excited to partner with you to hopefully give your students a really awesome experience. I'm really hopeful that it's going to be super fun. It's going to be one for the books all around. So just know that we are all in the same boat. We're all in the same team. And we're just really excited to get to partner with you in this. So we're going to call that a wrap for tonight. Again, I'm going to work with our team to go through these questions here and get them added to a Word document. If you attended our session earlier this summer, then you'll know that we did the same thing there. So we'll categorize those questions, hopefully get them there that are going to be in a helpful way. And then we are around if you need us. So don't be afraid to reach out. We're trying to get through all of our emails as quickly as we can. There's been quite a few emails today. So we do really appreciate your patience and kindness. And again, I think this is always just worth remembering. Our staff, we've been working really hard. We've got a whole team of students here that are working really hard. And so I appreciate your patience and your grace as we work through this, because again, it's not ideal for anyone, but I'm confident and I'm hopeful that we're going to have a really awesome experience still. So thank you for being our partners. Thank you for sharing your students with us. We are so excited to have you and them as a part of the OU family. And if there's anything that we can do to support you or your student as she goes through recruitment, please just let us know. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a good evening.